So recently I put out a video on some of anime's most overrated series of all time, and Attack on Titan found itself on the list. Now, after weeks of group chat debates on the validity of this show's popularity, I decided to revisit it and marathon up to its current airing, because honestly I've only seen the first season. After rewatching season 1 though, and truly digging deep to see what everybody else sees in this show, I gotta humble down and eat my own words on this one, cause this show is pretty phenomenal, cause I'm seeing where it's headed. I was convinced I hated this show because of its first season. I was in high school when it first came out and I was watching it weekly. I don't really remember why I stopped keeping up with it. Actually, I don't really remember being consistent with anime at that time. I was into other things, so that might have played a part. Nonetheless, since then up till last year, I watched the first half of that season 3 times before I finally finished it. So that being said, season 1, which is the season we'll be covering in today's episode, does have the second half as a handicap, but more on that later. So this overview will be based on the assumption that majority of the anime community has seen this show, going off of its popularity. So I'll just say it now, this is a total spoiler-free for all breakdown. If you do not want to be spoiled, do not continue to watch this video. Everyone else, grab yourself a snack or something like that and let's dive into this. Oh yeah, let me remind you, this is the season 1 breakdown. The other seasons will follow this one in the very near future. So this show off the rip gets an A+ on its damn world building, coinciding with its overall plot. The story, if any of you might not know, takes place in a completely fictional semi-post-apocalyptic world of like several hundred years prior to our own contemporary world. Semi-post-apocalyptic meaning that the Earth as mankind knew it to be had met its demise over a century prior to the start of the series, but since these life-changing events, the remaining population has been able to work around this and reinvent civilization. The things that took place 100 years ago, and at this point I'm shocked I even need for this to be broken down, everybody's seen this already. But anyway, these giant creatures, which seem to be a mutated version of a Homo sapien, actually I like to think of this as a Neanderthal on steroids, meth, ecstasy, Molly Percocet, speed, angel dust, bath salt, and let's throw in laced weed and a 40 ounce, along with the highest degree possible of growth hormone pills, popped up and wreaked havoc on the earth in high numbers, forcing the surviving people to barricade themselves in these walls. How they even managed to escape the Titans, by the way, they're called Titans, long enough to build these walls, I do not know. Moving on, time has passed and descendants of the ones who first saw this new world has continued living on these on-land colonies, for lack of a better term. This actually immediately reminds me of Gundam in a way, and anyone watching who's familiar with Gundam might automatically know what I'm talking about, although this show is a little bit more realistic since it takes place actually on Earth's land, where even though they had to restrict themselves from nature a bit, they were somewhat able to replicate a lifestyle as if things were normal and open to the world's resources with residential areas, schooling and everything. Check out Gundam. Gundam has these in-space colonies where they pretty much civilized this big giant, I don't even know what to call it, in space, and pretty much there's trees and there's land and there's facilities and all that. It's pretty interesting. Anyhow, it's been over a century and the Titans have not been able to make haste through these walls. That until one fateful day they did, and it would change both the lives of our protagonists and pretty much the energy of this show's universe forever. The Colossal and Armored Titans, which were 2 of the monster's most elite forces, burst their way through the critical lines of defense that had been stable for multiple generations. And as for the plot, it becomes a combination of a war for mankind to just survive the best they can against the Titans, as well as your brain having a bunch of questions about many mysteries surrounding characters and the secrets behind the Titans and their origin. That's the initial perspective one would have on the plot for the first half of season 1. Touching on our characters. For the main protagonist, we have Mr. Eren Yeager, and he is by far, just being honest, a hit or miss character depending on what type of personality you have. Initially, coming into the show, one will either love his fire and his passion or find it quite repulsive and a little frustrating. He reminds me a lot of the person I've evolved out of being the past few years, who tends to be way too emotionally driven and can make crazy, impulsive, ignorant decisions that could really cost him and even the others around him their lives. And he doesn't have too much regard for how the things he does might affect those around him once he gets a little bit too passionate. But let's back up a bit, because he's a deep character, and he does develop a more rational mind frame the more things happen to him as the story progresses. In the first episode, again, I'll give you one more warning, and this is the last one, that there's going to be spoilers. His mother got eaten by a titan right in front of his motherfucking eyeballs. But even going back before that, and I guess this will segue into the next character, Misaka, him and his pops went to do a house visit way before the series would have begun, and walked in on her mother and father murdered, and her about to be sold off for you know what. And Eren single-handedly offed every last one of these dudes. The dude has a dark past and a hell of a dark future ahead of him. Now Misaka is the next character who I just told you saw her mom and dad get killed and was damn near sold off. And it's quite obvious how deeply that affected her, because she plays the role of the more cold and introverted type of female protagonist. Cold as in not too expressive often, as she does tend to show compassion and empathy and can get emotional from time to time. However, when it comes to handling business, she holds no punches. And next up, we got this blonde hair, blue-eyed little bit. Nah, I'm playing. His name is Armin, and he's rather intelligent. He does tend to do a little bit too much crying though for my liking. Along with a plethora of other side characters, each main protagonist brings their own personality based on past trauma to the adventure, and it was done in a relatable manner. It doesn't take too long into the show for these characters to decide to join the military and train to fight against the Titans, with Eren being the ringleader, because, well, this is shown in anime and every main protagonist must have his resolve. But yeah, so that's the first half of the story. Here comes the elephant in the room, the reason why I couldn't label this a masterpiece right out of the first season, the female Titan arc. Now, there isn't too much to be said about this, and maybe other people like it, and my opinion is based off subjectivity, so I'll just make this brief. It was way too dragged out. What took about 12 episodes or so to flesh out, I felt it could have been wrapped up in about half the amount of time, and in hindsight, diehard fans of the series waited almost 4 years for the second season, and this is what you guys were left thirsting after? Like this was what left you guys thirsting for so many years? I kinda don't see it. Thanks to the final 2 episodes though, it did save the first season, because it left me craving to know answers to why multiple characters have become Titans, and it seems like there's more to be uncovered. But yeah, aside from that fraction of the show being a little bit slower, this is a story I am now well invested in. The world of Attack on Titan is one that certainly does what I find majority of modern anime does not do, which is provide you a world that you feel genuinely compelled to invest in mentally and emotionally, both through its setting, the nuances and hidden secrets relative to the plot, and of course its characters. And when I say that, I mean that from the perspective of a dude that's going to be 25 years old in July. Keep that in mind. So if you're 13 watching this, that might be right up your alley, the other stuff that I'm talking about. Cough, cough, My Hero Academia. Anyway, little things you see happen, rather it's the mystery of what Eren's dad offered to show him in that basement, to where his dad even dipped off to before all hell broke loose. I cared to know about this. And although this isn't the only anime, of course, to have this depth of secrets to uncover, many just do not do a good job, as I feel, of truly making me care to dig deeper. So hats off to AOT. As far as the empathy I felt for these characters and everything they're going through, the pain, the fear, the helplessness, I felt all of it, and it's something I always say goes deeper than just writing it into the story. It takes the right production team to execute this properly, and Wit Studio, which I've never heard of until now, did a fantastic job. Although I heard the current season is being handed off to someone else. Lastly, I want to touch on the production of this anime. If you've been watching the screen up till now, I want you guys to know this came out 8 years ago. I couldn't believe it. Is it that the development in technology has hit some sort of threshold, or was this show just chosen to be ahead of its time? It looks fantastic. The animation was so fluid. I don't think there's another show that has nailed CG animation in such a realistic way that was visually arousing. And there were instances in the show that were reminiscent of older anime with attention to detail through the adaptation of hand-drawn cells. At least that's how it looks. Certain environmental scenes, certain expressions on characters' faces. Phenomenal. So all in all, I give the first season of AOT a solid A- for leaving me with a burning desire to know a few things. Why are Eren and Annie Titans? Where the hell did Eren's father disappear to before the Titan attack 5 years ago? And what the hell is in that basement? Tune in next week as I dive further down the rabbit hole with the second season. like the video, comment down below what y'all want to see next. I'm out. Thanks for watching. Anime Backwhen.